Good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, March the 22nd, 2021. We want to welcome you to the Dallas Independent School District STEM Environmental Education Center virtual field trip. I want to say a special welcome to Thomas L. Marsalis, the Elementary STEAM Academy, Indian Creek, Southwest ISD, Martha Riley, Dallas ISD, and Harold Budd, Dallas ISD. Teachers, if you are watching and you have not registered, please do so by going to www.tiny.cc/EEC register. It's just for our attendance records only. Relationships between organisms will be the subject for the day. During this virtual field trip, students will classify living and non-living things based on whether they have basic needs and produce offspring. Students will analyze examples of interdependence found in various situations such as terrariums and aquariums, or pet and caregiver. Mr. Monroe is going to tell you about living things. Ms. Fuller is going to talk about non-living things. Ms. Nash will cover terrariums, and aquariums. And Ms. Ramirez will do pet and caregiving. Now, you cannot verbally ask us questions today, but you can go to www.tiny.cc/EEC question and answer and send us in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them during the program, or if not, we'll send the answers to your teachers. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll get to right. And Ms. Nash is going to tell you, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Monroe is going to tell you about living things.
Good afternoon, students. My name is Mr. Monroe, and we're going to be looking at living things, or you'll hear me talking about and describing what living things characteristics are. You know, I have here a replica of the planet Earth, a globe, in other words. And if we were all out in space and we look back at this planet, we would see these vivid colors. And we know that the colors represent different places on our planet, different conditions, and the surface being covered by certain types of vegetation, or maybe even water. The blue represents water, and of course we know green represents vegetation. And the unique thing about our planet, conditions are just right here so that we have an abundance of light. And we're just the right distance from the sun, which is the center of our solar system, that we are able to have life abundantly on our planet. Now, when we talk about life, we're talking about things that are alive. Now, the environment would be made up of things that could be alive, but basically there's some other factors there that we call non-living. Our focus today with me on your virtual field trip is the living. So bear with me while we talk about the living things with a little bit of focus on plants, because right now you're studying about plant and plant life. Now, students, listen. Living things, to be alive, they have to have certain characteristics. When we look at something, look at an object, and we want to determine whether it's alive or not, probably one of the first things that we look at, is it moving? Is it growing? Those are two main characteristics that everyone thinks about when they're thinking about something alive. Now, this rock, it's pretty easy to determine that this rock is not a living thing, correct? It's not moving, and I don't think it's going to grow, do you? How about this rock? Same thing. It's not moving, it's not going to grow, so we can come to the conclusion that most likely it's not a living thing. And one more thing, you know, there's a great big science word that we use, and you'll hear a lot of it as you get into the upper grades, and that is the word biotic. Biotic is a reference to living things. You know, you could even say, you know, if it's moving, it could be alive. And you think about this. You see a car driving down the road. Is that car alive? Most likely not, but it's moving. How about fire? Now, we know that fire can start out in a very small space, but it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger unless someone puts it out. So fire is growing. Does that make fire a living thing? Of course not. And then, water. If we jostle water around a little bit, it moves, doesn't it? And we know that water can take the shape of a container or anything it's in, but it doesn't really grow, does it? So those are two main characteristics. Now I want to discuss the other characteristics with you also. We know that movement is a characteristic of a living object or a living thing. Another big word, respiration. That means it's getting energy from the food that it consumes. Excretion. Oh boy. That's the ability to get rid of waste or body waste. Living things do that. And you heard me talk about the growing. That means that all living things have the potential to grow, to get bigger, to get taller, to get wider. And then another quality or characteristic is it deals with nutrition. And that is the ability to take in food that it will use for energy. Another very important characteristic of a living thing is the fact that it's able to detect changes in its surrounding, sensitivity. That's the characteristic that we're looking for that describes that. And living things can do that. And then the ability to reproduce babies or young ones of the same species of the same kind. Now, living things all do that in a sense or some type of form of those characteristics. Those characteristics that I just went over with you are what we call life processes. That's everything a living organism, now that's what we call living things, organism, a living organism can do to keep itself alive. And basically, organisms are made up of what we call cells, the basic unit of life. Now, talking about plants, if you were out here with us today, we would probably take a hike into the Post Oak Preserve. We have nature trails there. And as we enter the forest, we call it a forest, you would notice that it is full of different plants. They come in different sizes. We have plants that grow maybe 5 to 6 inches off the ground. That's about as tall as they're going to grow. We call that the herb layer. And then we have bushy type plants that will grow closer to the ground, or not closer than the herb layer, but they will grow anywhere from a foot maybe to 3 feet above the ground, and they kind of bush out. We call that the shrub layer. And then we have trees that they don't get very big at all. They grow maybe just a little bit taller than I am. We call that the understory. And then we have very tall trees over there that are pretty old. And when their leaves are out at the very top of the trees, you know what happens? It keeps a lot of sunlight from getting to the forest floor. And we call that the canopy. Well, those plants have needs. Those plants have a lot of the characteristics that I went over with you as far as life processes. They all go through most of those life processes to stay alive. Now, I don't know, some of the other teachers that are going to come before you on your virtual field trip will talk about maybe the needs of plants. We know that there are 3 basic needs of plants. They need sunlight, they need water, and they need something that we breathe out called carbon dioxide. And they use those things, those ingredients, to make their own food. And that's why we call plants producers. And you know what? You never see a plant just pull up its roots and chase some food down. So they don't have that kind of movement, do they? Now, students, listen. There are lots of different plants that live in the forest. Do we have plants that live in water? Why, sure we do. In fact, when I first started teaching out here, we had lots of plants that grew right at the edge of the water in the form of cattails and lily pads. You've seen them probably with the frog sitting on top of a lily pad in a cartoon or maybe in a picture. And those are what we consider water plants. But you know, the history of our planet, scientists that have studied that, they like to go back and talk about a very special plant that was here from the very beginning of life. It made it so we could have life here. It started producing oxygen. And it was in water that this plant started. It's not a very pleasant looking plant, but again, it goes through the process of making its own food and creating oxygen. It is called green algae. It's kind of yucky. It looks like old green stringy hair, but it is considered to be a plant. And it is considered to be alive. Even though it lives in water, it goes through most of the life processes that I have gone over with you. Now, as a comparison, and I didn't focus on animals, but you know, going back to a rock, you know, one day I had an experience, and as I was walking out in my yard, I noticed something that appeared to be a rock. And I noticed that rock began to move. Upon closer examination, I found out it was a box turtle. Now, just like these plants, the only big difference is this animal, which is considered to be an animal, has to eat something else to get its nutrition, to get food, to convert it to energy so that it can move around. But guess what? The plant is different simply because it doesn't do exactly what this box turtle, her name is Teresa, does. The plants actually stand in one place, and again, they take in the ingredients and they make their own food within their own structure. But other life processes like movement, respiration, excretion, growing, nutrition, sensitivity, and reproduction, that's what living things go through. They are called life processes, and we call living things biotic factors that make up our environment. Now, if any of you have any questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Gorman. So if any of you have any questions, maybe he can answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. And a student did have a question, and he said you covered the program very well, but he wants a brief description of living things. And this came from scientia.z.com off the internet. The term living thing refers to things that are now or once were alive. A non-living thing is anything that was never alive. In order for something to be classified as living, it must grow and develop, use energy, reproduce, be made of cells, respond to its environment, and adapt. Thank you very much, Mr. Monroe. Now, Ms. Fuller is going to tell us about non-living things.
Hey, boys and girls, I'd like to introduce you to my lab assistant. This is Spring. She's a ball python, and she's going to demonstrate to you what it means to be alive. She has cells, she has DNA, she eats food, she's a carnivore. We'll move her back a little bit. She's getting a little crazy here. She moves, she carries out respiration. She does a lot of the things that Mr. Monroe and Dr. Gorman just told you about. I'm going to contrast her to a non-living thing. Let me put her back in her cage. This is a quartz crystal. It's very beautiful. Look how pretty that is. And sometimes people say, well, a crystal grows. Well, it doesn't grow the same way a living thing does. A living thing grows by dividing cells, making more cells. This doesn't have any cells. This doesn't carry out reproduction. It doesn't carry out respiration. It doesn't eat anything. The only way it gets bigger if more silica is deposited on the crystal, but that doesn't grow like a living thing. Let me share my screen with you. And we're going to talk about some things in our environment that are non-living. That means they're not living now and they've never been alive. So, non-living things in an ecosystem. What factors in an ecosystem are non-living? Well, can you name one non-living factor in an ecosystem? Put on your thinking cap. Well, the sun is non-living. It's not alive and has never been alive. The sun gives us light and heat. It gives us energy. Most of the energy we use on our planet Earth comes from the sun. It's not a living organism. It doesn't reproduce. It doesn't carry out respiration. It doesn't move and grow like an organism with cells and with DNA. It's a star, and it's very important for life. We couldn't have light without it. We couldn't have life without it, but it's not alive. It's non-living. The moon is non-living, but it helps living organisms. The moon's gravity causes the tides, which are very important for not only ocean organisms, but other organisms on the earth as well. The gravity of the sun and the gravity of the moon control our tides. The moon does not have light of its own. It simply has reflected light. It doesn't have babies. It doesn't eat food. It doesn't move of its own volition. It moves because it's in an orbit around the earth and in a revolution around the earth. It's got a synchronous orbit, but it doesn't move because it's alive. Wind is non-living. It's not alive. It has never been alive. It's caused by the uneven heating of the earth by the sun. There's the sun again, giving us things in our ecosystem. The wind, we can't see it, but we can feel it on our skin, and we can see the results of the wind going by. We have a lovely windmill here at the Environmental Center. The wind blows on the windmill, the blades turn, which in turn turns a rotor, which turns a generator, which pumps water out of the ground. That's movement, but it's not movement. Never been alive. But it's not alive. It makes life possible, but it's not alive. They are non-living. They don't have babies. They don't move of their own volition. Something else can move them, like gravity or running water, but they don't move by themselves. They don't carry out respiration. They don't move and grow. Air is non-living. The atmosphere is the layer of air around our planet. It's not living. It has never been living. It's never been alive. The air does many important things for the earth and for living things, but it is not alive. Temperature and humidity are non-living factors in an ecosystem. Temperature is a measure of how hot or cold it is. Humidity is the measurement of the moisture in the air, but neither are alive. Neither has ever been alive. So here's a question to ask yourself. Is the sun living or non-living? So ask yourself these questions. Does the sun have babies? Does the sun have DNA in cells? Does the sun eat food? Does the sun carry out respiration? If all these answers are no, then you have to say that the sun is non-living. Let's go ahead and get out of our little slide presentation right here. And I'm going to show you something. Here is water. Water is not alive. We have it in our bodies. The first life that grew on our earth probably grew in water, but it's not alive. It's a physical factor of an ecosystem, a very important one, but it's not alive. Now here's another one. Do you remember when Dr. Gorman read you the definition of living and non-living? And it said if it was living, it could be dead, because in order to be dead, you had to be alive first. This is a dead stick. This came off a tree. This we cannot say this is non-living. This is a living thing because at one time it was alive. In order to be dead, you had to be alive first. So this is a living thing. The things that we talked about that are non-living have very limited parameters or edges to them. They don't have babies, they don't carry out respiration, they don't move and grow, they don't have cells and DNA. If you have any questions about non-living things in an ecosystem, Dr. Gorman will be more than happy to take your questions. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ms. Fuller. And the question came in, December, must have been the same student, a good definition of non-living things. Non-living things are inanimate objects or forces with the ability to influence, shape, or alter habitat and impact its life. Some examples of non-living things include rocks, water, weather, climate, and natural events such as rock falls or earthquakes. And this was according to Varsha on the internet. I did a lot of research lately, and it's best if you can tell where you got your information from. That way you'll be passing out some wrong information. And now Ms. Nash is going to tell you about terrariums and aquariums.
Hello, welcome to my classroom. Today we're talking about aquariums and terrariums, and I have a lot of both right here in my classroom. So welcome to my classroom. But let's think about what animals need. Because in our terrariums and our aquariums, we're usually having animals. So say it with me: food, water, shelter, and space. Say it again: food, water, shelter, space. So we're going to see how to make a terrarium, you have to include those four things: food, water, shelter, space. So I'm going to share my screen and show you my little project from yesterday with the help of Stripey the cat. So I started with a very small little container that I had, and it had, I think I had cockroaches in it, but there was nothing in it at the moment. So I took that home, and then I had to clean it. So it's always important to keep the habitat clean. Okay, so I used vinegar to clean it and a rag. And then I had to put something in the bottom, a substrate of some kind. So depending on what animal you're going to put in, you'll have a different kind of substrate or stuff on the bottom. So I had to put this thing in water and it's gigantic as it soaks up water. And then I'm ready to start the process. And I have my helper there, Stripey the cat, okay? And I went and got some plants to put in there, and I got a shelter, that little broken piece of pot that I reused as a shelter. And I cleaned that too, okay? And then I potted up my little plants, okay? Because I'm gonna have some plants in my terrarium. You don't have to have plants, but it's kind of fun sometimes. It makes it look pretty. Here's little violets from the yard. So I potted them up. I put the substrate in the bottom. I put the little shelter in. I have a dish for food, okay, and a dish for water. Now there's a dog that sits, but we're not gonna put a puppy in there. So here's my little animal we're gonna put in there. And this terrarium is really too small for most animals. Maybe a cockroach would be happy in there, but it's really too small for a turtle. So this little turtle had been severely injured and can no longer be released to the wild. So I put the little turtle in there, and I also put a lid on the top, because if you have an animal like Stripey around with somebody alive in there, Stripey might decide to investigate. And then I put my terrarium in the window, because I had plants. The plants are going to need sun. So if you're going to put plants in, you need to make sure that your plants have sunlight, because they need sunlight. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to look at some real ones I have here. Here's my little pretend one I made, okay, for my pretend. Aquariums are real animals. And you'll notice that my substrate is quite different. I have sand in the bottom here. Because this animal is a desert animal, a little lizard, okay, called a leopard gecko. And we're gonna see if we can find him, because right now he's hiding. They need shelter. So there's two shelters here. I have a little dish for food. I have water down there at the end, and I have a heat lamp. So this is a nocturnal animal, so they don't need daylight, but they do need heat. They come from a kind of hot part of the world. If it gets too cold, they can die. So let's see where he's hiding. Oh, not there. Under there? No, not there either. So I know where. Oh, he's shedding. Interesting. Okay, so really interesting here. Our little friend. Can you see how he's shedding? Okay, because he's a reptile, like a snake, they shed their skin. So this skin, I'm not gonna pull it off because he might not like it. But this skin has been shed. So see, scaly skin, big fat tail to endure times of no food. Okay, he eats little insects. He's an insectivore, and again, they're nocturnal. See how big those eyes are. So I'll put him back so he can hide and continue shedding skin. So he likes to eat. They all like to eat different kinds of food. So you need to research, if you have a little pet, what kind of food they like. So this guy, he likes these little cockroaches like that. And he also likes mealworms, okay? Some mealworms, yummy, yummy. Okay. And you don't want to feed them too much, because they're a reptile. They're not going to need to eat a whole lot. Okay? Mammals and birds, we need to eat all the time. The reptiles really don't eat very much, because they're what we call cold-blooded, ectothermic. Okay. Let's go over. I'm wheeling us over to see an aquarium. Okay. Okay. So in this aquarium, you may or may not be able to see some tiny fish. And I'm going to add a little bit of fish food. Again, overfeeding can be really bad. Okay. I have little fish in there, little guppies in there. And I also have a lot of snails, okay? And they like to eat this lettuce. So I put lettuce in for the snails. They were supposed to just clean the aquarium glass and stuff, but mainly they like to eat lettuce. So that's okay. Okay, they're kind of interesting too. So the snails are in there and the fish, and they can live together. And in an aquarium with water like this, you have to have a filter. Because again, because they're alive, they're going to be excreting waste products and also whatever detritus from the lettuce and stuff. So we have a little filter here to clean the water. And we also have to make sure we put treated water in, because otherwise they can get sick. Let's go over and see another aquarium and see if we can get this guy to perform for us. It's a little bit bigger. Okay, here. So in this aquarium, this light is so bad. Maybe it'll fix itself. So this guy, let's see if we can find him. He's a very strange, non-native kind of frog. Let's see if maybe if I feed him, he'll come out. And here's a picture of him. If he doesn't show up, call it a clawed frog, African clawed frog. And they're not native frogs, so they should not ever be released, okay? Never release an animal like that. So let's see if he'll come out. I'm gonna give him teensy weensy mealworm. See him? I picked him out especially. So let me see if he'll come out for some food. He should be hungry. He got fed on Friday. So again, they don't eat every day. Let's see if he'll come out. Where does he go? Let's see. Oh, there he is. You see him? No. They just hide. They're not great. They're not very interactive. Okay. So if you want to have an aquarium, fish are better than these guys. And again, they're not native and they should never, ever be released. Okay. Because they can disrupt the native ecosystem. So having an aquarium or a terrarium is fun. Okay. You can also just make a pretend one like I did. I thought that was kind of fun. You can just put, you can have a little toy inside it. You can use like one of those boxes that lettuce comes in, okay, to make your little pretend terrarium. Have a fun project. Remember the 4 things you need. You need food, you need water, you need shelter and space for your animals. Okay? Otherwise, they won't survive. So that's another reason to have a pretend animal, because it's sad if they die. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can ask Dr. Gorman.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nash. Now the question is, where can I buy a good aquarium? Well, any pet store or Walmart. I saw the other day, I was in Walmart and back by the pet section, and they had some real nice ones in there and stands for them and everything. But like Miss Nash told you, do some research. Don't just go in there and buy a bunch of stuff, because some of them you can't put them together. Some of them will reproduce too fast. Just make sure you know what you're getting. The best thing to do is to convince your teacher to set up an aquarium in the class, and that way y'all can share responsibilities of cleaning it and feeding them and everything, and you wouldn't be tied down to it 7 days a week, because these animals require constant care. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them you never even hardly see them. So that is my suggestion, is you do some research before you go and buy anything, because you might get the wrong thing or the aquarium too. Ms. Ramirez is going to tell you about caring for your pets.
Hello, my name is Ms. Ramirez, and we're going to be learning about the relationship between a pet and a caregiver. So I'm going to go ahead and show you 2 of my pets that I have. The first pet is a bunny rabbit. So let me go ahead and pull her out. Her name is Mochi. And think about, what do you think a rabbit looks like? So think about that while I try and pull her out. Think about, what needs does a pet rabbit have? So this is Mochi, and you can see she's an animal and she's a living thing. And think about, how do you know Mochi is a living thing? So Mochi here, we said, is a rabbit. She's a mammal because she has hair or fur covering her body. Look at those long whiskers and look at that nose. What do you think she's doing with that nose? So she is probably sniffing and smelling. She has those cute little paws, those big eyes to see predators. those long ears to help her listen. And she actually had some really long legs and feet to help her run and jump. Now, Mochi here is my pet rabbit. So as a pet, what are some responsibilities do you think I have as a pet owner? So as a pet owner, what are some things that I have to do to take care of my pet rabbit? So think about that, and we'll talk about that when we get into our PowerPoint. Our next pet that I have to show you guys is my pet chicken. Again, we know that she's alive. She's a living thing. She's an animal. This is Pepper, and she's a special kind of chicken called a blue silky chicken. They get that name because they have a blue patch of skin on their ear, and they get the name silky because if you guys were to pet her, she feels super soft like silk. And I know it looks like she has fur, but these are actually feathers, and that is because she is a bird. So I have a pet rabbit and a pet bird. Now we're going to go ahead, I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we're going to talk about some of the needs that these pets have and what my job is as a pet owner. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys and we'll get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about are what are the basic needs of any pet. So if you would like, you can pause the video really quick and allow time to discuss what are some basic needs a pet might have. But I'm going to go ahead and show them to you. So the basic needs would be, of course, food. So all living things need food to eat. In the case of my rabbit Mochi, she needs rabbit food to eat. Another basic need of pets are water. So it's our job to make sure that our pets have plenty of water to drink so that they stay hydrated. Think about the things that you need. So we need food to eat. We also need water and things to drink. Our pets need that too. Our pets also need shelter. So both Mochi the rabbit and Pepper the chicken live in some sort of cage during the day when they're not running around my classroom. So they need a place to live. Also, pets need air and space. So just like us, we need air to breathe, but we also need space so that we can roam and grow. So my pets don't stay in their cage all day. They get to come out and play and exercise, and then at nighttime they go back in their cage to sleep. So the 4 basic needs of pets are food, water, shelter, and then air or space. Now, do you think there's other things a pet might need? So can you guys think of some of those other things? So while these are the 4 basic needs, there are some other things a pet might need. So for example, my chicken and my rabbit have toys they can play with. They have a bed they can sleep in. The bunny has a leash in case I decide to take her for a walk. So there are some other things pets can have. But just keep in mind that the 4 basic or important essential ones that all pets need are going to be that food, water, shelter, and air or space. So take a look at this picture. So we already met Pepper, the blue silky chicken. This is a picture of Pepper when she was a baby chick. So look how tiny she was when she was a baby. So look at the picture. What are some basic needs that are being met in this picture? So take a moment to observe. What do you guys notice in the picture? And what are some needs that are being met? So the first thing that I noticed is there's water. We also have some food pellets over here. And then of course, because she's in her little container, she has air and she has space to move and roam around. Now take a look at our chicken cage. So this is where Pepper lives now when she's not in my classroom. And then this is where Mochi the rabbit lives when she's also not roaming around the classroom floor. So look at those 2 cages. What needs are being met in these pictures? And then try and compare and contrast the needs of a pet chicken and the needs of a pet rabbit. So do you think the needs of a chicken and a rabbit as pets are the same? Do they have any different needs? So let's take a look at our chicken cage. I noticed that there is a water container. We have a food bowl. The chicken actually has branches so that she can perch. She can flap her wings and kind of jump up onto these branches to perch or roost. She also has toys. So Pepper has a bell and a little treat ball that she can move around with her beak or feet to make some little bird treats come out. And then she also has a little box with litter. Sometimes she does lay eggs and sometimes she will lay them inside that little box. So that's our chicken cage. Take a look at our rabbit cage where Mochi spends her time during the nighttime. So what are some things that you notice here? So I noticed that she also has a bowl of water, but the rabbit's bowl of water looks a little bit different than the chicken's bowl of water. And that's just because chickens are super messy. And so their water bowl is shaped a little bit differently so they don't get it super dirty. And then we also see that the chicken has, the rabbit has a bowl of food as well. The rabbit also has Timothy hay, like dried grasses, so that the rabbit can eat that. The rabbit has a litter box. So this rabbit is litter trained, so she can go potty inside the litter box. Mochi also has some toys. So she has a kind of like a ball made out of sticks. She also has, it looks like a lollipop, but it's not a lollipop. It's a rock minerals. So it's made out of minerals that the rabbits need, and it helps file down her teeth so that they don't grow super long. She also has a chewing block. So again, rabbits, their teeth grow a lot, so they have to chew on things to keep their teeth nice and short. She also has a little place where she can lie down, and she has some other toys. So those are some ways that I have cared for the chicken and the rabbit and helped provide for some of their needs. Now, those were pets. Take a look really quickly at this rabbit. These are wild rabbits. These are cottontails from outside in the wild. So how do you think these wild rabbits are different from my pet rabbit, Mochi? Do you think they have the same needs? And also think about, how are these wild rabbits meeting their needs? Because I'm not the one going out there feeding those wild rabbits. So what do you think might be different between a pet rabbit and a wild rabbit? So I'll let you guys think about that question on your own time. But these little baby rabbits, they were found on a farm in a tractor accident. Their mom didn't make it, so we took them in and we helped care for them for a little bit. But again, since these are wild rabbits, they don't make good pets. They really don't like people. And so as soon as they were big enough, we let them go back into the wild. But remember, these are wild rabbits. If you have a pet rabbit like I do, like Mochi, that's your pet, and it's going to and also think about who helps these pets meet their needs. So we have Mochi over there eating a pretty little flower called a henbit. There's Mochi eating some lettuce. There's Stripey the cat. What do you think that cat wants at the door? So she was wanting attention. She was letting me know that she needed her needs met. She needed food. The thing about pets also need attention. What do you think Stripey was telling me when she was lying down on my computer, not letting me do work? And then we have a bearded dragon named Spike. You kind of learned about his habitat earlier when Miss Nash was telling you guys about terrariums. Spike is a pet, but he lives in a terrarium. And you can see that Spike is getting his needs met. I am feeding him some mealworms. So he actually eats insects. He also eats fruits and veggies too, so you can see him eating there as well. And then we have Pepper again. She is drinking water. So again, water is an important need for our pets. And I apologize for the slow video. We'll see if we'll keep on going. No, well, we might stop it. So these are my personal pets at home. I have 2 dogs, Toby and Abby. So you can see they are exercising. They're getting their playtime in, so they have lots of space for them to explore. So pets are a lot of work. They are a lot of responsibility. So if you do get a pet, make sure, as Mr. Gorman said, that you do your research and you understand what it takes to take care of that pet. And hopefully you guys notice that since I am the pet owner, I am the one that's responsible for helping these pets meet their needs. So I am the one that gives them food. I am the one that fills their water bowls. I am the one that has to take care of them. So that's the relationship between a pet and a pet owner or caretaker. They depend on us to help them meet their needs. So who helps pets meet their needs? Hopefully you guys know by now, that is caregivers or pet owners. It is us as human beings. And then my last thing is just an at-home challenge for you guys. See if you can make your own pet out of leaves, sticks, or other nature items. And then think about, what does your pretend pet need to live? So here's some examples of some pretend pets you can make using those nature items. And then on your own time, here's a fun little animal song that you guys can sing to help you remember those animal needs. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our screen share, and then we're going to give it back to Dr. Gorman, and he's going to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. And the question that came in was, do we recommend for young students to have pets? Basically, no. She just explained to you, Ms. Ramirez just explained to you the responsibility of caring for an animal. You get an animal, you get a pet, and 2 or 3 days later, you want to go to the show or the movie, or you want to go play baseball or something. And that cat's or dog's place needs to be cleaned out, new water and all, and that's your job to do it. I recommend that you join up with an older brother or sister and maybe share a few days a week to make sure that you're going to be a good caregiver, because it's just not fair for an animal to depend on you and you be out playing or doing something different and not taking care of that animal. All right, we're going to share my screen right now. During this virtual field trip, students classified living and non-living things based on whether they have basic needs and produce offspring. Students analyze examples of interdependence found in various situations, such as terrariums and aquariums, or pet and caregiver. Mr. Monroe covered living things, Ms. Fuller, non-living things. Ms. Nash told you about terrariums and aquariums, and Ms. Ramirez just explained the responsibilities of being a good caregiver or a pet. Thank you. How did we do? Teachers, if you would, go to www.tiny.cc/EEC feedback, fill out a short form and send it in to us. We appreciate if you do that so we can use it to decide if we're doing the right thing or not. We want the rest of you guys, and all of you guys, to have a great rest of the day. But more importantly, I want you to have a great rest of your life. Thank you again for joining us.